The camera never blinks, but you can almost feel the wind on your face. Two young men thunder across America in a gleaming Corvette, chasing something bigger than money, fame, or even freedom. In 1960, no primetime series had dared to pack up the entire crew, hit real highways, and film on location week after week. Route 66 did it anyway, and changed television forever. Yet behind the gorgeous postcards of prairie sunsets and neon diners lurked bruising lawsuits, medical mysteries, whispered morality clauses, and the single most chaotic star replacement CBS had ever survived. Viewers tuned in for the asphalt romance. They stayed for jazz riffs, literary intrigue, and surprise cameos from horror royalty like Boris Karloff and Lon Chaney Jr. That's the journey we're about to retrace, from the pilot's first rumble on the George Washington Bridge to a finale so abrupt even the writers were still packing when the network slammed on the brakes. Buckle in, the mile markers are wild, and the next bend hides more than you think. But the road didn't start with a Corvette. It began with a wild idea inside a cramped Manhattan office.
You remember the good times?
Sure. Fast cars, great music, and Route 66. Weeknights on Nick at Night.
Autumn 1961. The Corvette returns. Now a sleek 61 model with twin cove spears that made showroom crowds gasp. Chevy dealers reported a curious bump in test drives every Thursday morning, exactly when Wednesday's broadcast buzz still crackled in break rooms. The car was product placement before anyone coined the term. Viewership climbed, and with it, the guest list. Episode after episode read like an Oscar preview reel. Joan Crawford swept into The Night of the Fawn. Robert Duvall brooded through Birdcage on My Foot. Jack Lord polished his pre-Hawaii Five-0 glare in And the Cat Jumped Over the Moon. But the crown jewel arrived on Halloween week, Lizard's Leg and Owlet's Wing, a winking meta-horror romp in which Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., and Peter Lorre conspired in an Illinois hotel to decide whether their classic monsters still scared modern audiences. Karloff tried on the old Frankenstein boots, Chaney growled as the Wolfman, and TV audiences howled with delight. The ratings spike proved Route 66 could bend genres without blowing a tire. Yet just as the engine hit redline, a sputter echoed from the driver's seat. George Maharis, magnetic ex-longshoreman turned actor, co-star opposite Martin Milner's steady Tod, began missing shoots. Official memos blamed hepatitis. Tabloids whispered something murkier. Contract renegotiations, perhaps, or an undisclosed arrest. The network insisted on confidentiality. Maharis denied every slur. Fans scanned gossip columns instead of storylines. To keep pace, Silliphant wrote around Maharis's absences. Sudden trucking jobs out of town, one-line postcards, even a throwaway mention that Buzz had volunteered for a charity drive in Chicago. Viewers noticed, but the plot roller coaster was moving too fast to disembark. Still, every whisper grew louder, and by mid-season 2, nobody, not even the Corvette, could drown them out. What began as a mechanical cough was steering toward a full-blown breakdown. Season 3 opened with the crew camped in Tusauk, New Mexico, rewriting pages overnight while Maharis recuperated, or negotiated depending on who was talking. On-location shoots made schedule slippage ruinously expensive. Wasted days meant entire towns waited on standby. Leonard threatened to mothball the series if he couldn't count on 2 leads. Lawyers volleyed breach of contract letters. Maharis's agent volleyed medical affidavits. Somewhere in the crossfire, trust stalled. Industry gossip sharpened. Some colonists hinted the actor was battling an unspoken morals clause issue, a coded 1960s euphemism for sexuality rumors that could derail a career overnight. No proof emerged, but the innuendo stuck like tar. Sponsors grew twitchy. CBS fielded angry telegrams from affiliates caught between hometown censors and national headlines. Ratings wavered for the first time. Script pages arrived on set dotted with blank spaces where Buzz's lines used to be. In Iowa, Maharis limped through Who Will Cheer My Bonnie Bride, then vanished again. Sylophant, exhausted, began sketching a contingency nobody wanted to acknowledge: life after Buzz. The fix would mean swapping half the show's DNA in the middle of primetime, like replacing Lennon in the Beatles. Yet the alternative was cancellation, and the asphalt still gleamed with untold stories. When you can't heal the driver, you change the driver, but who could possibly fill that empty seat? Enter Glenn Corbett, square-jawed Texan and real-life Navy veteran, carrying the quiet intensity of someone who'd seen jungles more dangerous than any Hollywood backlot. He debuted as Link Case in the two-part arc 50 Miles from Home, a drifting ex-Marine wrestling flashbacks before PTSD had a name. Where Buzz was restless charm, Link was haunted steel. Together with Tod, they reforged the show's chemistry overnight. Audience mail split down the center. Half applauded the grittier tone, half sent flowers addressed, "Bring Buzz back." The producers framed the discord as healthy debate and pressed on. Chevy, sensing fresh marketing, delivered a 1963 Stingray with hidden headlights that snapped open like a shark's eyelids. That fiberglass missile matched Link's brooding aura and offered literal new angles for the cinematographers, who mounted Aeroflex cameras on suction rigs to capture swooping hood shots at 80 miles per hour down the Natchez Trace. The series suddenly looked years younger. Karloff and Cheney returned briefly in Season 3 promos. Universal Studios even loaned wardrobe for a publicity still showing Frankenstein's monster leaning on the Stingray's rear deck. It was stunt synergy decades ahead of Marvel crossovers, and it worked. Clay model kits of both car and creature hit hobby shops by Christmas. But ratings, though stable, never reclaimed their Season 2 crest. Audiences loved Link, yet mourned Buzz. The American freeway system was growing. Viewers had more literal roads to explore on weekends, less need for vicarious Thursday night wanderlust. Television was changing too, chasing brighter colors and studio laugh tracks. Route 66 still cruised, but the traffic around it thickened. And when traffic slows, even the sleekest machine overheats. Season 4 roared in with daring scripts that mirrored headline turmoil. One week, Tod and Link escorted freedom riders through Mississippi. The next, they stumbled onto an underground fallout shelter scam that preyed on Cold War panic. The realism felt urgent, but urgency costs dollars, and CBS accountants were whispering about cheaper sitcom pilots waiting in line. Mid-spring 1964, the axe fell with brutal swiftness. Production would cease after episode 23, effective 10 days from notice. Crew members got the word at dawn and still had to roll cameras by 9. Writers Sylophant and Larry Marcus dashed off a 2-part coda, Where There's a Will, There's a Way, whisking Tod to Key West, where he impulsively marries heiress Margot Tibbetts. Link, best man by default, hands over the Corvette keys, symbolically surrendering the open road, then walks alone along the pier as gulls wheel overhead. It's wistful, abrupt, almost dreamlike, and the final fade-out caught even Martin Milner off guard. His closing close-up came from an unplanned rehearsal take because lighting time had run out. Legend insists Sylophant's first draft plunged darker. One ending tossed Tod from the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, echoing Hitchcock, before a network executive scrawled, "Too grim, rewrite," across the margin. No script pages survive, but mildewed memos at UCLA's Film and Television Archive confirm frantic alternates were discussed by phone at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. Viewers, thankfully, never saw their hero sink beneath Tampa Bay. The series wrapped with no champagne, no wrap party, just rented trucks rolling west, while Florida humidity ate the gaffer tape off half-packed lighting crates. Minutes later, crews building a new variety show occupied the same studio spaces. The road had ended, not with a crash, but a sudden dead-end sign slapped on by accountants. Yet asphalt remembers every tire tread, and legends don't stay parked for long. If you measure a show by the careers it jump-started, Route 66 sprawls like an interstate. William Shatner practiced Federation Captain Gravitas in Build Your House with Their Backs to the Sea. Robert Redford glowered in First Class Mouliac, hinting at Sundance Cool a decade early. Lee Marvin, Ed Asner, Gene Hackman, Doris Roberts, Suzanne Plachette, the list runs like exit signs on I-95. Then there were the icons who needed no introduction. Karloff and Cheney Jr., grandfathers of every latex nightmare, proving in 1962 that black and white television could still raise goosebumps nationwide. Stylistically, the series birthed an entire subgenre, man on the move. Without Route 66, there is no Kung Fu's Kane walking the West, no David Jansen limb-dodging marshals in The Fugitive, no Quantum Leap correcting history, no Poker Face solving neon-soaked mysteries in 2023. Producer Donald Belisario once joked that every pitch about a wandering hero solving strangers' problems had to answer the same executive question. Okay, but is it too Route 66? Kerouac, weakened and disillusioned, never did sue. Biographer Dennis McNally notes the author's lawyers told him the road trip motif was as old as Huck Finn, and besides, CBS could bury a beat poet in paperwork. Kerouac dropped the idea, but kept grumbling, calling the televised violence phony cowboy stuff that missed the spiritual heartbeat he'd chronicled. Home video salvation arrived decades later. A battered 16mm syndication print circulated among collectors until Infinity Entertainment issued pricey DVD tins in 2008. They sold out in weeks. Shout Factory grabbed the license in 2021, remastering every frame, mono soundtrack intact, praise from critics who'd only ever seen muddy broadcasts. When George Maharis passed in May 2023, TikTok unexpectedly erupted with tribute edits. Black and white clips slowed to half speed, overlaying lo-fi beats, while comment threads debated which coast-to-coast episode route looked most drive-worthy today. Google searches for "Buy a 1962 Corvette" spiked 40% that weekend. Streaming rights bounce like a worn license plate. Pluto TV here, Prime there, but each time the series resurfaces, a new generation discovers its secret. The America of 1960 still looks uncannily contemporary when shot without studio walls. Dust never dates. A rumor of a 4K scan swirled in early 2025. Restoration techs have already tested AI scratch repair on Karloff's close-ups. Picture gutters glowing again? Fans keep refreshing forums, engines idling. So the road circles back, an endless loop of chrome, jazz, and wanderlust, which leaves each of us with one question. Imagine gripping that skinny steering wheel, sunrise igniting the horizon. Would you slam the accelerator like Tod and Buz, betting on strangers and day wages? Or play it safe in the rear view of someone else's life? Route 66 argued that freedom required nothing but nerve, curiosity, and maybe a convertible with a trunk just big enough for a duffel bag. 6 decades later, the idea still hums beneath every GPS reroute. The next exit could change everything. The show's crew is scattered now, some resting beneath headstones, others scrolling through grandchildren's phones, but their asphalt dream keeps rolling. Tire tracks cut into celluloid that refuses to fade. And if a black and white series shot for tube TVs can still spark online manhunts for vintage Stingrays, maybe the real legacy is simpler. The open road is infinite. Stories only end when we park them. So here's the key. The tank is full. Where will your road lead?